Time for afternoon service.
Let's.
What are you doing?
I'm typing, kinda.
Come on, baby. You take me home.
Oh. Okay.
Oh, you gotta have my phone.
Well, it don't carry a lot of the stations because I don't have, that's on spectrum. But you can always go. What is the commercial? That's what I'm saying, it's a regular TV. And I don't get those, I get those. And see, and then I have Netflix on there. Yeah.
It's trying to get me the install audio.
Right.
There's that again. Well, guess what, dude? You're gonna have to know we got it in here today. What? You're gonna have to know we got it in here this afternoon. Oh, my goodness. Oh.
Why is it silly?
I thought you said I was.
Good afternoon, Miss Aline.
I'm Miss Elaine.
Hello, Elaine.
We miss you.
That's unusual. Yes. She was online today.
So apparently they did not get.
No, not to my knowledge. They're being cautious through the quarantine.
One of them was
Drew got exposed at work, and we got, they got exposed there. Okay, let's see. Go see. 338. I'm gonna start this off, and I'll let you guys pick a song or two. How's that sound? Sounds good to me. 338. Come ye sinners for a needy, wreck the wound. Yeah, that's not right. 300. That's not the right tune. Oh well. Let's go to 335 then. How's that sound? I know 335. Hello, Melanie. How are you? Good to see you this early. Redeemed how I love to proclaim it. Redeemed how I love to proclaim it. Redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Redeemed through his infinite mercy. His child forever I am. Redeemed, redeemed. Redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Redeemed, redeemed. His child forever I am. Redeemed, so happy in Jesus. No rapture my language can tell. I know that the light of his presence with me doth continually dwell. Redeemed, redeemed, redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Redeemed, redeemed. His child forever I am. On the last, I know I shall see in his beauty the King in whose law I delight, who lovingly guardeth my footsteps and giveth me songs in the night. Redeemed, redeemed, redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Redeemed, redeemed, his child forever I am. Amen. Let's all stand and go to the Lord in word of prayer.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time that you gave us, Lord. Just let us listen to the message and apply it to our life. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Okay, Miss Betty said his eye is on the sparrow, and yeah, but I can't find it.
164.
Yeah, that's probably pretty close to it.
Yep, 164 in a month will be a 259.
Why is this? It's not in it. And the alphabet is where's perfect. Huh? Isn't that weird? Maybe it's 164. His eye is on the sparrow. It wasn't in that alphabetical index. Isn't that weird?
Right here.
I didn't see it. I was looking right at it. Maybe I wasn't looking in the alphabetical index. Maybe I was in that thing. Okay, his eye is on the sparrow. Why should I be discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart be lonely and long for heaven and home? Jesus is my portion, my constant friend is he. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. For his eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. Let not your heart be troubled. His tender words I hear, and resting on his goodness, I lose my doubt and fear. For by the path he leadeth, but one step I may see. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. But I know he's on the sparrow, and I know he's watching me. What was yours? 250. 250.
Mine is city for you.
Oh, but they sing amen.
Okay. Okay. That's fine. I have found a friend in Jesus. He's everything to me. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. The lily of the valley, in him alone I see. All I need to cleanse and make me fully whole. In sorrow, he's my comfort. In trouble, he's my safe. He tells me every care on him to roll. He's a lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. He will never, never leave me, nor yet forsake me. When I live by faith and do his blessed will. Oh, wall of fire about me, I've nothing now to fear. With his manna he my hungry soul shall fill. In sweeping up to glory, I'll see his blessed face, where rivers of delight shall ever roll. He's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. 617. Gina needs to be here for this one. Was a better song. 617. Gina? What are her ways? Some glad morning when this life is over, I'll fly away to a home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. Just a few more weary days and then I'll fly away to a land where joy shall never end. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. Amen. All right. You got one? Go ahead. 553. Come thou fount, 553. Come thou fount of every blessing, turn my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mountain fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. Here I raise mine Ebenezer, hither glad thy help I come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God. He to rescue me from danger, holds his precious. On that last, we'll close it out. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy goodness, like a fetter, bind thy wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, oh, take and seal it for thy courts above. Let's sing. Well, let's go to the book of Matthew, chapter 8. Book of Matthew, chapter 8. Just there. I was in Mark. Mark my place. Mark my place in Mark. Huh? Matthew Mark. Matthew Mark. Mark my Mark. Okay. Matthew chapter. Maybe I should have taken a snap of that.
No, maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah, the verse number 28. We've preached this before, but it is one of the miracles, and we want to discuss it and understand it. And when he was come to the other side, into the other side of the country of the Gergesenes, or in the other Gospels, it will be called the Gadarenes. There met him two possessed with devils coming out of the tombs, exceedingly fierce, so that no man may pass by that way. And behold, they cried out, saying, What have we to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of God? Art thou come hither to torment us before the time? Now, if you want to hold your place there, we can come back to that. We'll go to Mark chapter 5. And what we're doing is we're going to look at all three of the Gospels and get a full picture of what's going on. So in Matthew chapter 8, we find that there are two people coming out of the tombs, both of them possessed with devils. And in Mark chapter 5, verse number 1, it says that they came over to the other side of the sea, into the country of the Gadarenes. And when he was come out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. Now, let's stop for a second. Here it says there's one man. In Matthew it says there's two men. In Luke it says there's one man, or a man. What's the difference? And why is there that difference? Hello. Yeah, true. Luke wasn't there, but he got this eyewitness account from one of the eyewitnesses. It could have been one of the apostles or anybody that happened to be there. More than likely, one of the apostles at this particular case. But understand that, yes, from a different perspective. I get that. I understand that. Normally, when you encounter a group of people, when you encounter one person, you encounter a man. But when you encounter two or more people, depends upon doesn't matter how many people are there. Generally speaking, there's a spokesman for the group. And that's what we're seeing here. Out of these two men that were devil possessed, one of the men had more demons than the other, or maybe the chief of the demons of that group of demons was in a man, and he became the speaker for the group. So Matthew looks at two men, but Jesus really talks to only one of them. The other man is there, and he is healed just like the man with legion. But the man that has the legion is the one doing the speaking. That's why Mark and Luke focus on him, if you would. So there's two men coming out of the tomb, but here it says that when they came out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the tomb a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no man could bind him, no, not with chains, because that he had been often bound with fetters and chains, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken into pieces. Neither could any man tame him. And always, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. But when he saw Jesus afar off, he ran and worshipped him. Now let's go to Luke. Now let's go ahead and read Luke's account in Luke chapter 8. In Luke chapter 8, verse number 26 is where we find it there. And they arrived at the same country, or at this country of the Gadarenes, which is over against Galilee. And when he went forth to land, there met him out of the city a certain man which had devils a long time, and wore no clothes, neither abode in any house, but in the tomb. Notice this one says, a man out of the city. But it also says he was in the tombs. So a man who used to live in the city became possessed and now lived out in the tomb. So we're seeing and we're gathering information about this particular guy. And about, actually, both of them. Verse number 28. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell down before him, and with a loud voice said, What have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of God Most High? I beseech thee, torment me not. For he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of him. For oftentimes it had caught him, and he was kept bound with chains and fetters, and he brake the bands, and was driven of the devil into the wilderness. Now, without going into great detail, and this is maybe something I need to teach at some point, is demonology. What do demons do? How do they do it? And all that kind of stuff. We're not going to get into all that now, but I want you to understand that there are certain things when a person is possessed of a devil. There's certain things that can be evidenced of that. Number one, they like living among the dead. It doesn't mean they go out and necessarily live in the graveyard, but they are consumed with death and things like that. the darker negative. This particular person, or people, these two people, were extremely fierce according to our texts. They were able to be bound with chains, but then they would be able to break the chains. I don't know if you watch things on TV or not, but it always shows that demons can be strong, supernatural, strong, and that's absolutely true. When they possess a person, they literally can control their actions and their thoughts. We find that they would torment those other people that would come near them. In this particular case, nobody was able to go out to the graveyard and visit their loved ones' graves and things like that. Notice that they were cognizant of both the physical realm as well as the spiritual realm. As soon as they saw Jesus, Jesus didn't have to introduce himself. They knew who Jesus was while he was still in the ship. They probably, because of the demonic connection, they probably knew that Jesus had just calmed the storm. And as Jesus gets to the ship, they're imploring him, or they're running to him and imploring him to not banish them. One of the things that you find with demonically controlled people is that they are normally immodest in their behaviors and even in their attire. And these guys were what? Naked. Okay. Remember the man who had the son who was possessed of a devil? What would the devil try to do? Try to hurt him, hurt that child by casting him in the water to drown him, or casting him in the fire to burn him up, that kind of a thing. So they can control, but they are self-deprecating. They hurt the host. That's their goal, is to kill a host. In this particular case, they're doing what? They're cutting themselves with stones. You ever know somebody to cut themselves? They normally do that because they're quote unquote depressed. And when they get to that point of cutting themselves, it could be that they are actually possessed and not just oppressed. And so there's a difference in those two. But again, this is not what we're initially talking about today. But they recognize Jesus immediately. Let's go back to Mark chapter 5. Mark chapter 5. These guys were always, night and day, as you're turning there, always in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting themselves. But when he saw Jesus afar off, he ran and what? Worshipped him. Why would a devil worship Jesus? And by the way, the worship is bowing down to them. Why would a devil do that? Why do you think? Okay. He knows he has power to, Jesus has power to do something terrible to him, to this demon, demons possessed man. He could kill the man. He could cast out the demons. Yes, but the question is, why would they come and worship him? To seek. Long kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. What were you going to say?
I was going to say because they know Jesus is part of God, and God casting out the one word
Okay. That God cast out a third of the angels out of heaven. That's absolutely true. The fact is, Jesus is the one that created these guys. They have their life owed to him. He created them. Now, he didn't create them demonic. He created them. Okay? And they fell. And there is a thing out there, and honestly, to dive into the study more, that demons are not fallen angels, but they're actually a different entity out there. But either way, they recognize that Jesus has the right of worship. and they come and they fall down and worship. And the word worship literally is to fall on your face before. It's not necessarily to praise. Okay? Now we use that as praise, but in the Old Testament, many groups of people worshipped idols. They bowed down to a statue. They bowed down to a tree. We have people that do in the world ancestral worship, where they take food out and set it by the family tree, and they worship the ancestors by offering food to these false pagan gods, or the fallen family members. But the idea is here that we get here is that immediately these two recognize Jesus for who he is. They call him out, if you would. Verse number 7, and cried with a loud voice and said, what have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou torment me not. So literally, they're coming to Jesus. They're not worshiping him as the Son of God, even though they have to recognize him as such. But they know that Jesus has the ability to torment them. What kind of torment are we talking about here? Okay, actually, that's real close to being right. The word here, when you study this and you find in all three, the word is in the Greek abysso. It says, "Don't send me out into the deep." Abysso is the word for the pit without bottom, or the bottomless pit. Okay, so Jesus has the authority to send these demonic beings to the bottomless pit until when? No, actually before the 1,000-year reign. During the tribulation, the pit is open and the locusts come out. It could be that they're allowed to come out at the same time during the tribulation period. Okay? And during that time, they're roaming the earth and they're doing their dirty deeds. But at this particular point, they recognize that Christ has the ability and he has the right to send them to the bottomless pit. It's amazing, and I say this because what Jesus does on the earth, he does for two reasons. Number one, and we said this morning, for God's honor and glory, and for our benefit. Now, in this particular case, for his benefit, for the benefit of those around him, and yes, even for our benefit today. He cried with a loud voice, saying, what have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou torment me not. And he said unto him, come out of the man, thou unclean spirit. And he asked him, what is thy name? And he answered, saying, my name is Legion, for we are many. And he besought him much that he would not send them away out of the country or into the deep. As Matthew said. Now there were nigh unto the mountains a great herd of swine feeding. And all the devils besought him, saying, send us into the swine, that we may enter into them. And forthwith Jesus gave them leave, and the unclean spirits went out, entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently into a steep place, into the sea. And there were about 2,000. And were choked in the sea. So one man has 1,000 demons in him, but doesn't have a clue how many are in the other man. The Bible says when a demon is cast out of a house, out of a host, he walks around seeking a place for him to land. And not finding none, he returns to the original host, and finding it clean and swept, but still empty, which means the Holy Spirit's not there. He enters into the man again and takes 7 others with him. So this could be a thing where this man was dabbling with a Ouija board. He was dabbling in demonology. He was dabbling in an unclean lifestyle, inviting through his actions these demonic possessions to happen to him. And in this particular case, he's gotten to such a degree, there's over 1,000 of them in him. We don't know how many are in his friend, but we know that there are 2,000 pigs. And the demons probably spread out within those pigs. They didn't all just bunch up into one. And the 2,000 pigs ran down the hillside. Now, I've seen this hillside, and it is a hillside. Literally, it's almost like not quite a cliff, but you come up to the edge, and it goes down pretty sharp. And the pigs went over the cliff down into the Sea of Galilee, and they were all choked in the sea, and they drowned. Thus, the demons fulfilled what it was they're kind of designed to do at this particular point, which was what? Kill. What happened to them after that? I don't know. Did they stay in the pigs and get drowned in the sea as well? I don't know, to tell you the truth. Could be they left the pigs and scattered to the four corners of the wind, if you will. So they recognized Jesus. They didn't need an introduction. They knew Jesus the moment they saw him. They were afraid of what he could or would do. Now, demonic entities are not omnipresent. They're not omniscient. And they're not omnipotent. Only God is. So they didn't know what Jesus would do. They just knew what he could do. They fell down and worshiped Jesus and asked for compassion, not to send them into the abuso. So Jesus meets this man's needs where they are at. You know, Jesus doesn't demand that they clean up first. He doesn't demand that they have faith in him first, that the human hosts have faith in him first. He doesn't demand it. He doesn't demand that they put clothes on, that they stop being naked. But once he healed them, the natural inclination is what? To clean up, to dress up, and to live a right life. That's the natural inclination of a man with God in his life. When he heals, it's a permanent healing. And it is for, like I said, God's glory. In this particular case, and they that fed the swine, verse number 14 of chapter 5, told it in the city and in the country. And when they came out to see what it was that was done, and they came to Jesus and see him that was possessed with the devil and had the legion sitting and clothed and in his right mind, they were afraid. How in the world is this man who's been living in the tomb, who's been harassing us every time we walk down the road, how can he be healed? How can he be sitting in his right mind, absolutely calm? And he's clothed, which is completely contrary to what demons do to these people. The people from the city came out to see what happened. And they had fed, and they came to Jesus and see him that was possessed of the devil and had the legion sitting and clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. And they that saw it told them how it befell them that was possessed of the devil, and also concerning the swine. And they began to pray him to depart out of their coasts. Well, this is what happens when somebody really gets saved. They really get saved. Things happen in their life. Their life completely changes, and the people around them don't understand. And they distance themselves from those who really get saved. When Gina had gotten saved. She went off to Bible college, where I met her, and we established our relationship. When she came back home that next summer, all of her friends, all of them, even the ones that went to church, distanced themselves from her because she stopped doing the party thing, because she had stopped doing all the stuff that she was doing before. And now they didn't understand the fact that she went to Bible college and now she wanted to serve God and all of that. They didn't understand it. And literally, they backed off away from her. She didn't have to back off of them. They backed off of her. And some of you may have experienced things like that in your life, whether it be friends or family. You get saved and they kind of draw back and think, you're weird now. Right? That's exactly what happens. That it scares them that Jesus has this kind of power, and they literally ask him to leave. Verse 17. And they began to pray him to depart out of their coast. And then, and when he was come into the ship, he that had been possessed with the devils prayed him that he might be with him. Howbeit Jesus suffered him not, but said unto him, Go home to thy friends and tell them how great things the Lord hath done for thee, and hath had compassion on thee. And he departed and began to publish in Decapolis how great things Jesus had done for him, and all men did marvel. Have you ever seen somebody go out, and these are my words, that you know somebody, and when they got saved, they got all the way saved. And as they're starting to live their new Christian life, and they realize there's things in their lives that's not wrong, God speaks to them, and they drop those things off. That's somebody who's gotten all the way saved. They have surrendered their life to the Lord. A lot of times, Christians, we surrender to the Lord, but then we kind of take it back. We kind of don't let God lead us the way we ought to. This guy, he did exactly what Jesus told him to do. Go home and tell everybody what happened about you. And what's the outcome? The outcome was, a few weeks later, Jesus comes back. And as Jesus comes back to the shores of the Gadarenes, no more demonic people meeting him. He goes and they ask him to stay for several days with them. And he does. And he begins to teach them about himself. He teaches them the gospel. Many, many, many people are saved. Now, it's interesting that these guys are herding pigs. What's the problem with pigs in those days? Yeah, the Jewish nation was not allowed to eat swine. And there were Jews all around that country, not just on one side of the Galilee, but all the way around. There were Jews in Galilee, or in the Gadarenes area. There were Jews in Decapolis. There were Jews everywhere around about the Sea of Galilee. And if they were not owning the swine themselves, they were probably buddies with those that did. And I'm going to tell you, it was an unclean animal, so the Jews were not allowed to, even to this day, that's probably the biggest thing that a Jew does when it comes to clean and unclean meat. You know, when they butcher a cow, they don't eat anything past the stomach down. Anything on the backside, they give that away. The Jews won't eat it, have nothing to do with it. They won't have anything to do with pork or ham or anything. I got out and I got a big old bucket of chicharrones, pigskin. I love them, and I eat them. They're good for me. The only problem is I eat them. Sometimes they're too light and fluffy, and just keep cutting. I gotta have a drink of water. But the Jews are not supposed to have anything to do with pork, living in pork, or living or dead, or anything else. So it's fascinating to me that the demons go and destroy the one bumper crop out here that the Jews aren't supposed to have around anymore. So Jesus comes back a few weeks later, and they ask him to come and dwell with them in the city, and not just come and go, but to dwell with them for a while, and he does. And as he does, again, many people are saved. So this is what God did for this man. And he went out and he declared it in all Decapolis. Decapolis was not necessarily a city, but a region. He lived in the particular city where the gatherings were, but he did it abroad. He told everybody. So we come down to the lesson that we have to learn today. Is that number one, Jesus has the authority over the demonic world. Every time we see this, we've seen it several times already in previous miracles, but here, this is a difficult case, if you will. We haven't come to the case where they come down from the Mount of Transfiguration yet. That happens. He says this kind of demon can only come out through prayer and fasting, which Jesus had been doing up on as far as that goes. So in this particular case, these demons, Christ is more powerful than they are. They fall down and give him the authority and ask him to not destroy them before the time. Now, can I tell you, I don't know the reason why Jesus didn't send them to the bottom of the pit. Jesus had a reason for that. But again, it's for his honor and glory. All of a sudden, everybody realizes he has the power over the demonic realm and over the fallen angels and things like that. And I don't know that they necessarily separated those two out. But he has the authority over the over the spiritual realm. And because he healed these two, he now has, he is showing his power over the physical realm, their physical bodies as well. So Jesus, he's done this for this man. Let me ask you, and let's think about it for a minute. I'm going to ask a question, and you probably already know what question I'm going to ask, but I don't want the typical answers. Let's really think about this. We know what God did for these two men. What did God do? What has God done for you that you were able to tell somebody? Yes, ma'am.
John was walking away from God for a long time, and literally sent people to be on the side of the road on the signs that said, different scriptures, things that said, God loves you, whatever it was of the day. I had passed by them so many times that finally some people had. God started telling me.
Okay, very good.
So back in church. So I came to this one, it wasn't,
Yeah.
it wasn't apparent that's right and wrong.
Okay. So God was merciful in bringing you back to a God Bible-believing church. Very good. Okay. What has God done for you?
Well, he brought me
Mm-hmm.
because I was leading like the marriage that I had. And then actually I found that I wasn't saving. It was the same.
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
what helped me.
but can I tell you, it was also to save Jimmy.
Well, it was.
But
yes,
but
it saved us, but
he decided to go the direction.
not saved.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So God has, and if somebody else wants to raise their hand, that's fine. But God has done specific things. He brought me to salvation after me lying to myself, for seven long years. I wasn't saved, but he continued to deal with me on those issues. And finally brought me to salvation, finally called me into the ministry, And, 40 years later, here I am. Kind of a thing. Okay. Yes.
I was 24 years old, and I was thinking about my future, what was I going to do with my life? Trying to see a job that I came back to live with my mom in Granbury, and there was this, I came to this church to visit, and I was going to go out to visit other people, but the house was so nice and I stay with it, and then one night, and there's this and over here, I was in the where God, it's just like the thing that just breaks my heart is just like when other people, like I brought to church, like my friend Ashley, was so excited about that, and then just sit here, and then right after that, she didn't choose to, but like I'm able to
Very good. Betty here says, I was born in the country with freedom of religion. My mother took me to church from a young age and saved me so that I might be able to tell others about it. Yeah, very good. Okay, so we all have things that Christ has done for us, that God has done for us, that we can tell others about. Rebecca, had you not been adopted, you probably would have been saved. So you can tell people about that. I don't know my original parents or whatever the situation is, and God allowed me to be adopted into this family. Eventually, I came to church, got saved. That whole thing. So each of us have things that God has done in our lives, not just to bring us to salvation, but bring us to a place where we are able to tell others about what God did for us. Most of the time, when I'm out door knocking or I'm able to witness, yes, I give them the gospel. Yes, I give them the Romans road. But I always tell them what God did for me. Why? And I tell that part of, our testimonies can be very long and drawn. So I tell the portion that applies to the situation at hand. They may not give them. It's like the story with Legion. We may not know every detail. In fact, we probably don't know every detail, but the details are given that we can know that this happened, and we can know what Jesus did, we know the outcome. What actually happened to the demons after the pigs were choked? Who knows? Who cares? It's not part of the story at this particular point. But the story is told so that we can understand, that we can learn that God has power over demonic forces. God has power over physical forces. God has power to change a life, as evidenced by our own lives. I think maybe we tend to say, my life isn't that big of a deal. My life isn't. Can I tell you, if you're saved, your life is a big deal. That's all there is to it. Your life is a big deal if you're saved. So, anything else that God has done for us? Well, let's talk about salvation. We know that God has done this for us. Number one, He what? Died for our sins. He shed His blood. Number two, He resurrected from the dead to apply salvation to us and his blood to the mercy seat. He showed me, he allowed me to be saved, allowed all of us to be saved. He gives us a home in heaven. All those other things that we always mention. All those, and there's so many things, and I don't want to glorify sin in any way, shape, or form. But can I tell you, you saved me from a life of sin. Very easily could have been a drunkard or a dope addict. Very easily. I was in that kind of way. I could have been manager of a grocery store my whole life. And never known the gospel. Never been saved. Can I tell you, there's lots of things I could be. And I'm so thankful for what I am. So the question is, what has God done for you? And it's something that you probably could take home and worship God in prayer by rehearsing everything that he has done for you. This can be a worship. Remember, this guy wanted to go and be with Jesus. If anybody should have gone to be with Jesus, it would have been one of these guys. One of these possessed guys. But he says, no, go home. Just go home. You can serve me better at home. You can serve me better here than coming with me. And he did, or they did, because they went back home to their families, to their friends, to their jobs, and began to tell everybody what had happened. So think about this, maybe as an exercise at home tonight or tomorrow or whenever. Take a pen and paper and write down the things that God has done for you through salvation, because of salvation, all the way up to the present. One of the things God's done for you is you got two beautiful grandkids that you get to raise in Christianity. That's a blessing. Some of us have family that's not saved, but can I tell you, we have that opportunity without being nagging. I guess we have the opportunity. I've got a sister that watches me online now that never gave a care about me being in the ministry, but she watches me. She was online this morning for a little while, and that's wonderful. She used to never do that. And she is slowly getting the gospel, her and her husband. So they're slowly getting the gospel. And that by itself is a blessing. When I'm able to preach, they're able to hear it, and slowly and surely they're getting the gospel. Now, whether they ever get saved, that's not on me. I'm able to tell them. Right? People at work, we're able to tell the people at work. And I'm able to use my testimony of salvation. I'm able to use the testimony of my son dying. I'm able to use the testimony of what I'm doing now for God. Each one of those in their course and in their time, I'm able to talk to them. The other day I was at work, and in fact it was Monday when it was really cold. We were supposed to be there at 7, and we didn't start working until after 10. But I was able to sit there and talk to them. And these guys, man, and invariably somebody brings up something. Oh, Bryce, did this, or what about this, or what about that? I was able to come down to the point and just tell them, says, the reason I am like I am, I don't curse, I don't lie on purpose, I don't do this, I work hard, all this other kind of, I do this because of what Christ did. I don't do this to become a Christian, I do this because I am a Christian. And for the rest of the time I sat there in the break room, nobody cursed. It was an hour or so, nobody cursed. It was wonderful for me. But then somebody came in and they started cursing, and all of a sudden everybody started cursing. and I walk out. At that particular point. But you know, that's the way it is. So what has God done for you? Do this. It's an exercise of worship to write down everything that you know that God has done for you, and then thank Him. Get on your knees before Him. Get in your prayer closet. Get in your favorite easy chair. Bow your head and pray. And thank God for the things that He has done for you. Worship God. And by the way, I think that's where this phrase comes in the beauty of holiness. We need to worship God. Any questions today? Any questions? I messed up your question. Why? Were the demons destroyed by going into the sea? Probably not. Well, they're spirit beings. How did they get in the man? How did they get in the man? Jesus sent them there, but understand. Possibly. You have to as a person, you have to let them in.
Right.
Now, they may be sitting there constantly oppressing you, but then you do something that opens the door that allows them to come in. He could have been doing some kind of Ouija board. He could have been in pornography. He could have been in any sorts of number of things. Tarot cards, you name it. Seances, fortune telling. And he could be the family member of somebody who was doing that stuff. Astrology, yeah. But the idea is this. A demon goes into a person because the door has been opened for that to happen. The pigs don't open and close doors. They don't have that kind of sentient being consciousness. So how did Satan get into a serpent? He just took it over. It's an animal. They can do that. Remember, Balaam's donkey talked because of an angel. Yes. Yeah. Anything that's, whether it be a fallen angel or a demon, they have directive from Satan. Yes. And I need to do a study on that. And, maybe I'll work that up for Sunday afternoon sometime. Yeah, at this point. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the only purpose of getting too deep is so that you know how they operate. Okay. So if you're listening, you're here, and you have self-hurting tendencies, that's either a possession or a oppression. Depression itself is oppression. Right? So again, we'll get into all of that. I've got a guy that I read after, and that's what he does. So I'll try to get as much information as I can. Oppression, not possession. I know. I'm just making sure that other people know what we're saying. Okay, I still got people on. Okay. So depression is a type, and by the way, there is depression that is chemically induced. Your chemical balances in your body are off. But some of that can be from depression as well. If you need to take medication for that, take some medication for that. Go see the doctor as far as that goes. Okay, not every depression. I have bouts of depression, to tell you the truth. They don't last very long, but I do. Yeah, and that's good. That's good. Okay. But that's one thing that a demon, if you are possessed, will do. Will try to get to the point of self-harm in some way, shape, or form.
They start out slow.
Yeah, they'll start out. It doesn't come overnight. It starts out slowly. You fall into the pit,
Right.
and then I got no way out. And, what happened to my brother-in-law? So, okay, let's pray. Father, we come before you, God, we thank you today. Thank you for this lesson. Father, I pray that we would take that admonition, that we would go home and write on a piece of paper all the blessings coming to salvation and true salvation up until our present day, and that we might worship you and worship your Son because of the blessings that you do show on us every day. Now, Father, go with us into the week. Some of us having to go to work, and others having other challenges in our life on a weekly basis. God, give us grace, help us to understand, and to live with the idea of pleasing God in everything we do. We love you and thank you. In the name of Jesus, your Holy Son. Okay, you are dismissed. Those of you online, thank you very much. We'll be back Wednesday, Lord be willing. Anna loves Tom Boyle. Good to see you.